Good morning and welcome back to Squawk Box here on CNBC. I'm Joe Kernan along with Becky Quick and Andrew Ross Sorkin. U.S. equity futures now down 72 points. We were down triple digits right at the beginning of the show. A little bit of improvement. We're down about 29 on the NASDAQ, on the S&P down 9. I guess in the headlines we'll probably tell you that there were some headlines this morning that China wants more talks before they even signed phase 1 of the trade deal, and that's why we sort of started off on the wrong foot after the big gains, trade-related gains, China trade-related gains on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
We will get the chance to speak with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin coming up in just an hour's time and get his take on some of those headlines this morning, too. In the meantime, here are some of the other stories that are in our headlines this morning. It is a normal day of trading for U.S. stocks. However, the bond market, most banks, the Postal Service, and government offices are all closed today because of the Columbus Day holiday. Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg is no longer chairman of the jet maker. The company says that the move is designed to try and let Muilenburg focus on returning the 737 MAX jet to service. The jet was grounded after 2 fatal crashes, and U.S. airlines have now taken 737 MAX flights off their schedules until at least 2020. Directors of WeWork parent The We Company are set to meet as soon as this afternoon to decide on one of 2 rescue packages. As Andrew reported earlier, one would effectively hand control over to the office-sharing company to its biggest investor, which is SoftBank. The other would raise billions in new debt with the help of J.P. Morgan Chase.
And futures falling on a report that China wants more talks before signing off on any kind of deal. This sending futures lower this morning, and Kayla Tauscher joins us with the latest. We thought we had a deal, now maybe not so much, Kayla?
Well, Andrew,
like a familiar refrain.
Yes, the U.S. side is calling it a deal. The Chinese side is calling it progress. Most of the details are still waiting to be sketched out. President Trump acknowledging that this partial deal, even as partial as it is, still needs to be written. And a person close to the talk says another in-person round of negotiations is likely. The deal includes a commitment by China to buy U.S. farm products, which Trump said in a tweet will happen immediately. China will also open its financial services industry on a preset timetable. The 2 sides have also agreed to transparency on currency moves. The tariff hike set for this week will not take place, and negotiators suggested they would work to avert the December 15th tariffs, but that's not set in stone, and that's something the market is watching closely. Here's how the Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin described the partial deal yesterday.
Phase 1 includes very substantial issues. I think people originally thought, oh, this was just going to be about agricultural purchases. There are multiple chapters. The intellectual property rights chapter will be included in its entirety. And this isn't just buying soybeans. These are structural issues around biotech and other things that the Ag Department for years, and an enforcement chapter. Now, along with it, it includes substantial purchases of agriculture and other issues.
So that is a lot more than the president was talking about on Friday afternoon. But the president has also said, Andrew, that Congress will not need to sign off on this, that will make it more expeditious. But you can bet if there is enforcement in intellectual property language that you could see lawmakers who are working to try to make that language public so that they and we can see exactly what is in it, what both sides are committing to, and what that means for the relationship going forward. I know you'll ask the Treasury Secretary this and many more questions when you have him on Squawk Box coming up next hour.
Absolutely, Kayla. Thank you for that report. Meantime, joining us right now to talk about this and more, William Foster, Moody's Vice President, Lead U.S. Analyst, and Urian Timmer is also here, Director of Global Macro at Fidelity Investments. Thank you both for joining us. You look at this deal, non-deal, what is it? And how should investors even think about it?
Right. Well, I think it's a step forward, but it's, we can't expect too much. And obviously we're seeing that right now from China. Fundamentally, we see some progress in terms of pausing on the tariff front, but we still have the core issues that are still at stake: intellectual property, technology transfer.
But so did it make sense for the market to move the way it did on Friday? Or was that just, there was a knee-jerk, weird...
this is what we've seen, over the last several months, right? And any positive news, right? Yeah, positive response, negative news, it's the opposite. So I think that's, we've come to expect that, but the substance of the deal right now is obviously not there. So we're gonna see more of this moving forward.
Aaron Timmer, did you know that this was a head fake? on Friday.
Even a skinny deal is progress, right? So if we can save Christmas over here by delaying or postponing tariffs, the Chinese clearly need to buy a lot of ag products because the African swine fever has wiped out the livestock, and they need to rebuild that. That requires a lot of feedstock. So it's clearly in everyone's interest to do something, but still the notion of an all-encompassing deal that fixes everything is, I think, extremely unlikely. And so there will be other iterations, other chapters in this story over the coming year or so. But for now, this creates some visibility, and I think it would be
it creates visibility into what, though? For real? Just this Christmas situation?
Tariffs matter, right? It certainly matters to profit margins, to consumer prices. So even if they're only delayed and not completely taken off the table, it buys companies some more time to maybe re-engineer supply chains. And we'll probably see the same thing with companies guiding lower and then beating those lowered estimates.
Is this a de-escalation, or is this just a freeze on potential additional escalation?
It's probably the same thing, right? I mean, a de-escalation by not enforcing the new tariffs, which are going to hurt a lot more than the last tariffs, and getting the ag purchases. I mean, ag purchases by China from the U.S. are running at half previous year, so it does matter. But ultimately, we have to wonder, what the end game is, and the end game probably is a long one.
But one of the things that's been fascinating in terms of what stocks have been working, even on Friday, when the news was better. I mean, everything moved, obviously, but clearly everybody's still in a defensive posture. Which is to say, is there any pocket of the market that wouldn't be a classic defensive stock that you think should be working, or a sector that should be working right now?
I mean, in the end, this is really about what do you expect to have. How bad is this trade situation going to be? Will there be escalation moving forward? And certainly there should be pockets of opportunity. But in the end, our view is that you're going to continue to see this. This basically buys more time for the two sides to try to come to some kind of agreement on some of the core issues. And that will just give the market more time to kind of digest and hopefully not basically puts a baseline in there where the Fed can help as well.
Shares of Caterpillar were up pretty sharply.
So you have the structural trades. The bond proxies, to me, is part fear of recession, and everyone's been fearing a recession for years now. It's like everyone is still looking for the big one, and it hasn't come, and now the Fed actually is starting to add balance sheet expansion again, so maybe it won't come. But part of it is also demographic, the search for yield. I mean, utilities, earning a 20 multiple makes no sense unless you are filtering it through that lens. But I think if we stave off a global recession, then certainly the banks and other cyclicals should at some point really start to shine. And banks have very, very robust cash yields at this point, so they are getting more attractive.
Like banks. Nobody likes banks. Nobody's liked banks for years.
Nobody likes banks, but if you can get past this late cycle phase and back into sort of an early cycle phase, then typically the banks do okay if the yield curve steepens, even though short rates are lower.
You have a final word on that?
No.
You're going to leave it to Urian. Okay. William, thank you. Urian, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, the link between THC and vaping deaths. Leading former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb to pen an op-ed about changing marijuana laws. He'll join us in just a few minutes. And a big week for earnings that's going to start. What you need to know, it's already kind of started, but really in earnest this week. What you need to know ahead of the results. Some of the world's biggest banks are reporting it's, I don't know where Wilf is, but he's either very anxious or very excited. Stay tuned. You're watching Squawk Box on CNBC.
Interactive Brokers charges.
Right now, the future is being written by people like you. Creative thinkers, tech lovers, problem solvers. Are you going to stand by and watch? Well, show the world what you've got. Join others around the UK on an EY degree apprenticeship in digital and technology. And earn a salary working with exciting businesses while studying towards a degree. Don't let the future pass you by. Get involved. For more information and to apply, search EY Digital Apprentice.
At first, we were worried about using purple bricks, but since we sold with them, I haven't been able to stop going on about them, have I, dear?
No, love.
I've been telling everyone. Family, friends, that confused guy at the supermarket.
Yeah, you haven't really shut up about that.
But seriously, did I tell you about our purple bricks estate agent, Michael?
I met him too. He was nice.
We could talk to him whenever. Anything we asked, he could do it.
That's enough now,
He
dear.
was brilliant, always available to chat on the phone.
Enough,
I
Robert.
could email him any time of the day or night.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
If you're collecting your prescription, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free prescriptions. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of up to £100. Thankfully, there's a simple way to find out if you should be paying. Search Check Before You Tick online and use our eligibility checker to find out if your benefits mean you can claim for free. Or you can ask your pharmacy team. So always remember to check before you tick. This was brought to you by the NHS.
She did it! Her first word! Listen, everyone.
Mama.
Oh, she's lovely.
Mama.
Oh, did you hear that?
Oh. Savings. Savings account.
Teaching your kids how to save may not be this easy, but you can get them learning good habits and skills from an early age, thanks to the range of children's savings accounts from Yorkshire Building Society. Just another example of real help with real life. Find out more at ybs.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Welcome back to Squawk Box, everybody. It is a Monday morning. The bond market is closed, but the stock market's open. The futures are, at this point, indicating a lower open for the Dow, down by about 80 points below fair value. S&P futures down by about 9. The NASDAQ off by about 29. This comes on concerns about whether a trade deal was finalized or not. There have been some headlines out there this morning suggesting that there would be additional talks required between the two parties before anything is signed on this phase one of the deal. As a result, you saw the Dow futures down by as much as 100 points earlier. Right now, again, the Dow futures down by about 72.
And Joker took the top spot at the weekend box office again, adding $55 million and bringing its total domestic haul now to $192 million. The comic book origin story stars Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. Separately, kid-friendly Addams Family came in second, bringing in more than $30 million in its debut weekend. The animated reboot features the voices of Oscar Isaac and Charlize Theron, and Bette Midler as well.
All right, coming up, former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb says the federal government's refusal to challenge state laws legalizing pot is partly to blame for the vaping epidemic. He explains after the break. Don't forget, at 8 a.m. this morning, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin joins us to discuss the partial trade deal with China. Squawk Box will be right back.
When you need to see up close, do you...
At first, we were worried about using purple bricks, but since we sold with them, I haven't been able to stop going on about them, have I, dear?
No, love.
I've been telling everyone. Family, friends, that confused guy at the supermarket.
Yeah, you haven't really shut up about that.
But seriously, did I tell you about our purple bricks estate agent, Michael?
I met him too. He was nice.
We could talk to him whenever. Anything we asked, he could do it.
That's enough now,
He
dear.
was brilliant, always available to chat on the phone.
Enough,
I
Robert.
could email him any time of the day or night.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
To succeed in small business, you need technology that runs efficiently. When you partner with a Dell Small Business Technology Advisor, you get advice, one-on-one partnership, and tailored productivity solutions, including computers with Intel Core processors, servers, storage, networking, plus industry-leading monitors and accessories. It's how they help your small business make the most of every minute. To speak with an advisor today, call 0800 085 4878. That's 0800 085 4878.
In cinemas November 15.
So you're going to build a car to beat the Ferrari with a Ford, correct?
Get ready for Le Mans 66.
They hate guys like us because we're different.
starring Matt Damon and Christian Bale.
What are they doing?
Making your car go faster.
That's more like it!
Based on the incredible true story
You got a plan? It's high risk.
of Ford versus Ferrari.
No, I thought the whole point was to win the damn race.
Le Mans 66.
Hit it.
In cinemas and IMAX November 15.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
The Peugeot Professional Van range is the beating heart of businesses across the UK. Whether you're on the road with only your DAB radio for company or navigating tight spots with rear parking sensors, all Peugeot Professional Vans give your business that edge. Visit your local Peugeot dealership during our October van event from the 10th to the 31st of October and drive away with an exclusive finance offer. Master the impossible. Peugeot Motor Company PLC is acting as a credit broker, not a lender. Finance subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Business users and over 18s only. Guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Can I have chemo at home?
It's only suitable
I've heard
for a couple of types of
treatment.
cancer.
Type of treatment. Oh, literally, just
The doctor will decide.
When you search one question about cancer, you end up with millions of results which contradict each other. For clear and uncomplicated information, come to Cancer Research UK. Visit us online or give us a call on 0808 800 40 40. Cancer Research UK. Together, we will beat cancer.
Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb calling on lawmakers and regulators to change pot laws. That's what he believes is one of the reasons behind many of the recent vaping deaths. Dr. Gottlieb joins us this morning, and Scott, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
First of all, why don't you explain the link between vaping and these recent illnesses and deaths that we've seen?
Well, now it seems clear that a lot of these vaping-related illnesses, if not all of them, are correlated with the use of THC vapes. So the second most common form of delivering THC, the active ingredient in marijuana right now, is vaping the liquid itself, not burning the flower. Burning the flower is number one. Vaping the liquid is actually number two right now, not far behind in terms of what consumers are doing. And it now appears that some of the people who are selling these vapes are mixing oils into them to increase the viscosity, because the thickness of the oil is seen as a measurable trait in terms of how potent it is. So they're putting oils in there that shouldn't be in there, and those oils are damaging people's lungs. The best analysis we have so far is out of the states of Illinois and Wisconsin, which looked very closely at the cases that they reported in those states, and fully 80% of the people in those situations had reported vaping THC. You could surmise that there's probably underreporting. 5 to 10% of people who use THC don't want to self-report it, especially when they're in the throes of an acute illness.
Let's talk a little bit about why you think this happened. You think it's because the government, the federal government, for a long time ignored what states were doing in terms of legalizing it?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we have a policy, a federal policy of prohibition that's not enforced. So effectively, it's illegal at the federal level, so it should be illegal at the state level. But the federal government doesn't enforce that prohibition because they know it's not politically practicable anymore to enforce prohibition. So you have no federal regulation effectively, just very little federal regulation. Actually, the only regulation you have is FDA still imposes regulation when certain people are making outlandish medical claims. But DEA, by and large, isn't enforcing that much anymore because the state laws now supersede federal law under what Congress has done. Congress passed appropriation riders that say that the federal government can't enforce the federal law in states where marijuana laws legalize it, in part recognizing that that federal law is too draconian. So I think what we need to do is have a federal law that actually can be enforced and allow federal regulatory authorities to impose appropriate supervision. What you've had grow up in these states is basically a wild west of unregulated products, and now we're seeing the consequences of that.
So you're not advocating for the idea of saying that no one should be allowed to do this. You just want the federal government to oversee?
Well, I think the reality is, look, I wouldn't be in favor of recreational marijuana laws. I think that there are sequelae from people using pot frequently. We see impacts on executive function, short-term memory, especially harms in expectant moms and children. But I think that ship has sailed. I think the reality is, with so many states legalizing marijuana and legalizing some form of recreational use of it, that any kind of federal scheme is going to need to take some accommodation of that. But I think the time has come that we need to grapple with this at a federal level. We can't can't ignore it anymore. I think for a long time the federal government wanted to ignore this problem, both the executive branch and successive administrations and Congress. They wanted to say, well, we're not going to change our law because we know that doing that would be controversial. We're also not going to enforce it. But that's not working anymore. And I think that these tragic illnesses demonstrate the harms that could happen when no one's minding the store, so to speak.
The states not have the ability for oversight?
No, they don't. They claim that they provide regulatory oversight, but there's a patchwork of different schemes. Some states do more than others, but I think by and large the states don't have the capacity to both police what's being sold in their so-called legal dispensaries, as well as shut down the black market. A very big black market has grown up alongside these legal state dispensaries, and no one's really taking action to shut those down. I think you're going to need federal authorities in there to do that.
And the federal authorities would be which authorities, and they would do what? They would basically give an approval to say, okay, this is decent vaping, this is decent stuff, you're okay to do this? Does that send mixed messages when you're concerned about what it means for people who are habitual users?
Well, I think if you're going to make clinical claims, medical claims, they should be held to the same standard as any other drug. I think we should make it easier to get access to legal marijuana supply, to do appropriate drug studies for people who want to make medical claims, if there are medical claims to be had here. And I think that the DEA and other authorities, including FDA potentially, could regulate what's being sold for the potency, for the manufacturing, for the ingredients, for the claims that are being made. Look, I would like to see the recreational uses shut down entirely and the clinical uses held to an appropriate standard, the same standard that other drugs are held to. That's a debate we ought to have. I'm being practical here, and I don't think that that's a debate that's going to be winnable at this point. You have both Republican and Democratic states legalizing marijuana. It's going to be very hard to get something like that through the Senate. But I think even if we were to federalize it and allow some form of recreational use, we could limit what can be sold, the potency of what can be sold, the forms in which it can be sold. The reality is no one should be vaping THC. Putting something into the lungs is inherently dangerous, and we just shouldn't allow the vaping of these concentrates. These are super concentrated formulations of THC that nobody should be inhaling into their lungs in the form of a vapor.
Well, that's what I want to get to. You're opposed to the entire idea of doing this. This almost sounds like a backdoor way of, instead of the federal government saying we're not going to disallow it, you would then have agencies that would regulate it out of existence. And I'm all in favor of that, but it's not very popular, and good luck with that, right?
Yeah, I don't think that the agencies could regulate it out of existence. I think if we had a national debate here and a federal reckoning on what we were going to do, where it would end up probably, if we were willing to have that debate and actually come to accommodation, it'd end up tighter controls on the medical claims, holding them to a higher standard, and allowing some form of recreational use, probably for products that are lower concentration, that are only delivered in forms that pose less harm than vaping e-liquids, like what we're seeing causing the illnesses. I think that there's a way to have a compromise where you allow some form of recreational access in the states that want to allow it, but something that looks far different than what you have today, something that's far less permissive than the state laws. Look, that's not a great outcome in my view from a public health standpoint, but what we have right now is far worse, where you have a federal government not enforcing the law at all, barely enforcing the law because they know the existing law isn't practical, and the states not imposing any supervision because they're incapable of doing it, or they don't want to step in a vigorous way.
I heard an interview with a guy who I think represented the trade industry of vaping, independent vaping shops, and he said the fault and the problem all lies with Juul, because they were the ones who started marketing this towards minors. He said the vaping shops, the independent vaping shops, have been the ones who have been there to help people ease their way off smoking into something that's a little better for them, vaping. What do you say to that argument? Because I know you're not a fan of Juul either.
Well, this is with the e-cigarettes and nicotine-producing e-cigarettes, right?
But right, this is like the difference between who's helping smokers actually stop smoking.
Right. The reality is that the vaping stores, which are adult-only vaping stores, by and large do a good job keeping kids out. There is a very low violation rate among those stores, and they're selling systems like open-tank vaping systems that the kids just aren't using. What the kids are using are the disposable cartridge-based products like Juul and Vuse and Enjoy. And one of the things I was saying in the spring, before I left the agency, was that the 2019 National Youth Tobacco Survey data showed another sharp increase in teen vaping, we would have to consider taking all the cartridge-based products off the market. I think what you need to do as a regulator is target what actually is causing the problem. What's causing the problem are the cartridge-based products like Juul, and FDA and the government could selectively target just the cartridge-based products, take them off the market, and leave the adult vaping stores to continue to sell products to adults. That would be one alternative, rather than just banning all the flavors, which is going to hurt the adult vaping stores and hurt the cartridge-based products, but it's going to ultimately leave the cartridge-based products still on the market.
Hey, Scott.
And what's going to happen is kids are going to start putting counterfeit pods in those Juuls.
Right.
Interesting.
So you saw, I've always asked you, why would you want to bring up a whole new generation that, sort of initiate an addiction to nicotine? And we never really thought it would be that bad since it doesn't have all the carcinogens. But you saw that study in mice. Do you have any faith that is pointing to something in terms of nicotine actually being a carcinogen in its own right? Or do you need more studies on that before you would conclude that?
Well, there's a lot of studies that have looked at nicotine specifically to see if it could cause cancer, and they've concluded it doesn't. It might be a tumor promoter. The National Academy of Science and Engineering Medicine said that there's a potential that nicotine is a tumor promoter, but it doesn't cause cancer. This was a very small study done with a small number, I think 20 inbred mice, and it isolated the effects of nicotine. So the headline said that vaping caused cancer. What it looked at was just the nicotine, and it seemed to demonstrate that the vaping doesn't have any
but the
effects.
Nicotine did. They did.
Right.
They got a big incidence in cancer with the nicotine vape, but you took the nicotine out and just did the vaping, and there was zero incidence.
Right.
But it's mice.
I'm skeptical.
Okay.
I'm skeptical that nicotine causes cancer. Now, that said, we had a signal when I was at FDA, I talked about this publicly, of damage that vaping was causing to the lungs in an animal study, and we replicated that study. I announced this in April. The results of that should be out soon. That was a very rigorously done study, a very large study, where FDA was evaluating whether vaping independently had an impact on the lungs, in this case of an animal study. It was a toxicological study. That's going to be an important set of results to show, to answer the question whether or not vaping is having some impact on the lungs that's negative. I believe it is. There's no free lunch here. You can't inhale something into the lungs that way, on a repeated basis and not cause some damage to the lung. The question always was it less harmful than smoking combustible tobacco? And I still believe it is. If you could fully switch off combustible tobacco, you'll improve your health.
Dr. Gottlieb, thank you for joining us, getting us up early this morning. Now go back to bed.
Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Thanks. Coming up when we return, Bernie Sanders calling for a revolution and slamming Elizabeth Warren as a capitalist. His comments and reactions straight ahead. So head to a break. Take a look at U.S. equity futures at this hour. Dow off about 72 points right now. Back in a moment.
Make fitness routine with Pure Protein. You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions, like online skills tests, which let a candidate show that they are the right hire. And we give you this toy monkey, who will bang its cymbals when the right CV appears on your desktop. Okay, there is no monkey. There is no monkey. But there are online skills tests.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today to try skills tests for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
People have always told me I can be a bit wary of modern things.
Very true.
So when Jane suggested selling the house with purple bricks, I weren't happy.
No, you weren't.
You see, I don't like technology. I don't like the internet. I don't like moving house. I don't like their adverts. I don't like purple.
Luckily, I don't listen to him, and our estate agent Emma were perfect. She gave us her actual mobile number. She was always available.
Fine, they were great. Still don't like purple.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
She did it! Her first word! Listen, everyone.
Mama.
Oh, she's lovely.
Mama.
Oh, did you hear that?
Oh.
Savings. Savings account.
Teaching your kids how to save may not be this easy, but you can get them learning good habits and skills from an early age, thanks to the range of children's savings accounts from Yorkshire Building Society. Just another example of real help with real life. Find out more at ybs.co.uk.
Searching for a more memorable short break? Fly from London Heathrow to Cork from $55.99 each way as part of a return trip with Aer Lingus. Step off the plane and into a warm welcome in Cork. Surround yourself with breathtaking coastal views. Soak up the culture of Cork City or head to the colourful town of Kinsale and indulge in the best seafood around. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
On Squawk Box, financials in focus as Wall Street gets ready for some big reports. We've got a breakdown of the banks straight ahead. And then what business leaders should take away from the NBA China situation. Chairman and CEO of Operation Hope, John Hope Bryant, will join us. After that, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is our guest. We're going to hear about the partial deal struck with China, what's next for America, what the market should be taking away from all of this. Squawk Box will be right back.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
If you can drive a van that's built in Britain, with class-leading fuel economy on every run, to Middlesex to do some masonry, or to Tunbridge, carrying well over a ton. Yours is the all-new Vauxhall Vivaro, and you'll be driving a great Brit van, my son. All-new Vauxhall Vivaro carries British business. To find out more, search New Vauxhall Vivaro.
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up, because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
This isn't the first time, peoples of London. If you're a serial soggy sandwich eater, or your mouth water when microwave go ping, then you commit crimes against cooking. So thank goodness for Meerkat Meals. Dine out with 2-for-1 on food at your local favorites, like Chicago Rib Shack Wandsworth and Café Rouge. All with the Meerkat app when you buy, so compare the market.
Oh, lunch is ready.
I'll get my coat.
Qualifying purchase 2-for-1 on equivalent starters, mains and desserts, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
When the kids come a-knocking this year, even real monsters will be filled with fear.
At Asda, we've everything to make your Halloween come alive, with ghoulish goodies like treat buckets and toffee apples for just 47p each. Halloween, bring it home with Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores online, subject to availability.
Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. Huge week of earnings on the way. Dom Chu joins us right now with a look at what investors need to watch ahead of it all. Dom.
All right, so Andrew, it is one of the busiest times of the year, 4 times a year for all of us here at CNBC when we talk about all these corporate earnings reports. Now, this week, about one in every, well, let's just put it this way, nearly 50 stocks in the S&P 500 are reporting their results throughout the course of the week. 7 of them are Dow components. Let's take you through some of the big highlights here. First of all, we've been talking about the big bank earnings. They kick off in earnest on Tuesday, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, but then Dow component, Johnson & Johnson there as well. Bank of America, Netflix, IBM, CSX come up on Wednesday. Morgan Stanley, Union Pacific, Honeywell lead up on Thursday. And then Friday, Amex, Coca-Cola, Synchrony Financial, Schlumberger, among those names reporting. Now, if you take a look at these particular companies, put them all in aggregate with the S&P 500, and you have some of the expectations coming up that are going to be a little interesting. According to data from Refinitiv, S&P 500 earnings are slated to decline by around 3.2% over the same period last year. Technology, which has been a leader in terms of earnings growth and the market, are seen having earnings drop by 7.6%. And the big issue facing a lot of these companies and the outlook going forward is how important is that global trade uncertainty, specifically between the U.S. and China. How much will that weigh? But that's a quick preview of what we should expect, Joe, out of earnings season as we start and kick things off tomorrow with those big banks. Back over to you, Joe.
Has anyone seen Wolf? Dom, have you seen him?
I have not, because he's probably in a hole somewhere trying to prepare for all of these things that are going to happen with the banks this week.
I mean, I wonder if he's excited, anxious.
I bet you he's excited. I bet you this is like the most
probably
wonderful
a mix
time
of
the
all
year.
these emotions.
Yes, I think it is for Wilfred. But
For
he shows it in such a cool manner as he does.
He does, but he gets. I mean, I guess it's his job. He gets into the most minute, like this Mosby character we have coming on, the most minute details of these bank earnings, which we're going to talk about now.
But you know that's the reason. So he really, really kind of has a real thing for these banks and those ROEs and ROAs.
Right. You got to be a unique type of individual. Unique. Let's
just
get
like
to
Marty Mosby.
Let's get to him, Director of Bank and Equity Strategies at Vining Sparks. And earlier we did have someone recommend the banks, and Andrew's right. They have been out of favor, but I've seen some people come on here and say, this is the time because of all the bad news is out and interest rates are as low as they're ever going to be. And this is the time when you build a position based on price to book and all these different things. So I actually have heard people recommending banks. Are you recommending banks?
We are, but you got to take the timing of when it's going to be, like you said, the right time. Banks are a trade built on, are we going into recession or not into recession? Andrew, when you talked about banks have been out of favor, the reason they've been out of favor is after the tax reform, and since then, it's all been about the inversion of the yield curve and are we going into this recession? And the probability, at least what people talk about it, you hear them on here, the probability has been going up. In relation to the earnings growth that we just saw on those numbers, down 3%, if you look at the banks in general, year over year, they're going to be up 2%. Now, we parse that out a little bit more. Money center banks are going to be down 1%, and the super regional banks are going to be up 6%. So you're seeing the momentum that we're being able to see really come from the super regional banks, and we think that eventually that's going to be your best play valuation-wise and also momentum-wise.
What should we be looking for, and what are the biggest, which reports? I mean, within the reports, what are we looking for, and who are you? Who will be most indicative of the health of the sector this week?
So there's two pieces of that question, and they're very important. If you look at what you're looking for, the recession question is on two axes of earnings for the banks. One is net interest margin, so what happens with interest rates? And the second piece of it is what are we doing as we're looking at credit? What we continue to see and why the banks perform better every quarter on earnings season, stock-wise, is that credit hasn't risen its head. There's no deterioration in credit as we're going through this process. If there continues to be no deterioration, that pushes that recession expectation off into the future. What we have seen is that the inversion of the yield curve and the drop in rates has impacted net interest margins. So while we hadn't seen that charge-offs go up, net interest margins are starting to come down. So we are going to see that negative impact. So what we want to see is which banks can fight that net interest margin compression, and that's Regions and Fifth Third. So if we can see those two banks talk about, at least going forward, how they're being able to restructure the balance sheets and be able to defend their net interest margin, then you can have both of those elements working in their favor.
What do these latest moves by the Fed mean for any of this, if anything?
What it means is,
what does it mean?
Well, it matters because when you go through this, now this is where it gets a little complex. We talk about Wilfred and I getting into the metrics.
And look at you smiling.
Yes, it is.
He's so excited. He's just like, the moment is here.
So weird.
This is the
Super Bowl. He gets it 4 times a year.
Yeah, that's right. So this is the point. This quarter, we're going to see net interest margins compress more because when we went from rising interest rates to declining interest rates, there wasn't much you could do with deposit betas. So in other words, your deposit pricing was frozen. Your asset yields, when the Fed reduces rates, asset yields go down. If you can't change your funding cost, there's going to be a lot of compression. However, as we've gone through the second and third eventual cut, what we'll see is that those deposit rates will start to come down. That'll be a benefit for the margins that we're not seeing in this particular quarter.
Got it. Well, what's interesting, and what I'm going to glean from all this is if we see some disappointing numbers and the bank stocks go down and people start saying, see, a recession is coming, you really need to look into where the weakness lies. If it's not credit weakness and it's net interest weakness, then you shouldn't automatically assume that it's indicating that there's a recession that's imminent. It just means that it's a flat yield curve.
That's exactly right.
So we need to watch for credit. Credit is going to be the canary in the coal mine for whether recession forecast should go up, probability.
And bank valuations.
Bank valuations.
Both. Because if you don't get credit, in other words, we can have some compression in interest margin. The impact on the bottom line and returns is pretty manageable. We can maintain or sustain returns at this level, which valuations don't reflect that. Right, Andrew?
Right.
So if you maintain or sustain your returns, the price of tangible book value, which is now 165, which is really supported by recessionary levels, dividend yields, cash returns, things like that. But if we actually sustain the returns, the valuations have to go up towards 2 times tangible book value if we're not going to see that recession.
So does Wilf call you to get some info on?
Not yet, but we probably need to go to lunch one day and sit down and compare notes.
Do you tell him stuff? Does he tell you stuff? Is it an equal exchange of ideas and analysis?
Over these interviews, we do, yes. When we kind of talk and go through the online and go through the
What do we need you for if we can just do a CNBC guy and just have him come in and talk about
what I think we add is 30 years of experience of running a bank.
You don't have to answer this question. Don't
Thank you, Marty.
There are some times.
Anyway, it's free anyway. We don't pay anyway. So
we're going to talk about that. We're actually going to come back to that.
We're going to see you like 6 times this week. And we love
We're thrilled to do it.
Yes.
Yes, I'm saying that. Thank you. When you leave, I'll shake your hand to show you that. Whereas he'll give you some kind of, and then put cream all over his hand. I do appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me, yes.
Marty will be back tomorrow.
We will be.
Marty will be back tomorrow.
You don't need to shake
Lucky
his hand.
Marty.
He's going to be in tomorrow.
All right, when we return, what executives should take away from the NBA's spat with China right after this break? And at the top of the hour, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is our guest. We'll get the latest on the details with the trade deal that we think we have with China. Squawk Box will be right back.
Get the best of Squawk Box every day in our new podcast. Subscribe to Squawk Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When you finally stop working.
At first, we were worried about using purple bricks, but since we sold with them, I haven't been able to stop going on about them, have I, dear?
No, love.
I've been telling everyone, family, friends, that confused guy at the supermarket.
Yeah, you haven't really shut up about that.
But seriously, did I tell you about our purple bricks estate agent, Michael?
I met him too. He was nice.
We could talk to him whenever. Anything we asked, he could do it.
That's enough now,
He
dear.
was brilliant, always available to chat on the phone.
Enough,
I
Robert.
could email him any time of the day or night.
Purple bricks. You'll be totally sold.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing services cost extra. See website for more details.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Find out what you need to do to prepare at gov.uk/Brexit.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
The Peugeot Professional Van range is the beating heart of businesses across the UK. Whether you're on the road with only your DAB radio for company or navigating tight spots with rear parking sensors, all Peugeot Professional Vans give your business that edge. Visit your local Peugeot dealership during our October van event from the 10th to the 31st of October and drive away with an exclusive finance offer. Master the impossible. Peugeot Motor Company PLC is acting as a credit broker, not a lender. Finance subject to status. Terms and conditions apply. Business users and over 18s only. Guarantee may be required. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up. Because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run.
feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Squawk Box with Senator Elizabeth Warren continuing to climb in Democratic presidential primary polls. Senator Bernie Sanders explicitly highlighted key differences in their core economic philosophies in an interview with ABC's This Week.
Elizabeth considers herself, if I got the quote correctly, to be a capitalist to her bones. I don't. And the reason I am not is because I will not tolerate for 1 second the kind of greed and corruption and income and wealth inequality and so much suffering that is going on in this country today, which is unnecessary.
Bernie Sanders using capitalist now as an epithet, joining us to discuss this and whether corporations will take a stand on China, another issue that relates to all of this in many ways. John Hope Bryant, CEO and chairman of Operation Hope this morning. Capitalist as
Operation Hope, not Operation and Hope, although it is Operation and Hope.
We're all hoping, John. Capitalist as epithet. Does that create enough light between the two of those candidates? And is there light between the two candidates?
It creates great headlines, right? But we got to stop with the prosperity or pitchforks conversation in this country. I am who I am. First of all, I think they mean well. I am who I am because...
You think Bernie Sanders means well?
I think Bernie and Elizabeth mean well. I think most people mean well. I have a couple people I have some hesitations about. But I think, I grew up in Compton in South Central. Without capitalism and a banker coming and teaching me financial literacy at 9 years old, who was Caucasian, by the way, who didn't want to be there, but the law, CRA, forced him to be there, Community Reinvestment Act. When he came and taught me financial literacy, my life fundamentally changed. I said, how'd you get rich legally? So without that, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have been who I am in China or in France or in Russia. So people hate rich people until they become rich.
Do you think that the people that you spend time with, oftentimes in inner cities that you're trying to help, think of capitalism as a good thing, or they hear Bernie Sanders and they say, right on? What's the prevailing view among some of the folks you're talking to?
We're feeding fears. If capitalism helped me succeed, then I love it. If capitalism on the other side is success, then I hate it. Most people who, my 4 million clients, love it because they're participating in it, and we show them how through higher credit scores, higher aspiration. And I'll say what Joe hates, that capitalism needs a software upgrade.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
No, it's a clever way of. I understand what you're saying. At least you want to keep capitalism and get an upgrade. I think for Bernie, that's just. But we shouldn't be surprised. He honeymooned in Moscow. We know all about Bernie. But he's not a factor anyway at this point.
But with all due respect, he's also participating in capitalism. It's like my friends.
Well, that's an understatement.
It's like the people my friends say they hate America. Well, then go someplace else. But no one's jumping on a boat or a plane.
Don't say go back to where you came from. You can say go somewhere else.
Okay, by the way, no one's leaving. So
I'm gonna pivot from that conversation though to a related conversation. You talk about capitalism needing an upgrade.
We got to make capitalism work for at least these God's children, and that's what I'm doing at Operation Hope. So. Okay.
And is that, hold on, real quick, is that capitalism or
free enterprise?
It's free enterprise.
The free enterprise system, and I think it's best embodied through capitalism is like democracy. It's a horrible system except for every other system.
Okay, but where are you then on taxes?
I think we need.
Some people say let capitalism do its thing, free market should do its thing, but then on the other end, the way to balance it is then redistribution on the tax side.
Let's see if I can get Joe to get a rise. I don't think it's about taxes. I think it's about aspiration and incentives. I think we need to take the tax system and reimagine it that grows the economy. You've heard me say this before. Let's incentivize, tax me more, but assign my revenue to massive internships, a gateway up, massive apprenticeships, a gateway up, doing things that grow the economy. I think people who have wealth resent if it's just being thrown away.
John always talks about the other side. He doesn't talk about just bringing down, and trying to cap income with the billionaires. You talk about using it in effective ways.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were going to disagree. No, we massively agree on that.
When you said I want to incentivize people for opportunity, how would I... You think I want to disincentivize people for opportunity?
But I think he wants to tax people on the higher. I think you want to tax more on the higher end.
We should. Yeah, we should. There's too much concentration at the top.
You got to tax. You got to go beyond that to really do some.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now he's talking about taxing people more broadly.
Right.
Lower and middle income people. He wants to tax them more.
You can't tax lower income people. We're going to give them.
We shouldn't be France, all right? Because you just drive everybody out, right? But we also, and we don't want to be Greece, okay? But we have to find we need a ladder system like we've had 100 years ago.
Okay, so here, the second question, talking about the capitalist upgrade that you always talk about, capitalism needing an upgrade. How should capitalists or American companies behave, and this now goes to the China situation, what's going with NBA.
Freedom's not for sale.
When are they supposed to speak out? When are they not supposed to speak out?
After you have your first Ferrari, you can probably speak out. Look, if you have one Ferrari, you don't need to be complaining about